I used to believe that moving into a nursing home would be a peaceful, wise transition, a place where I could finally relax, be cared for, and not worry about the daily challenges of aging. My family reassured me, friends said it would be good for me, and even I convinced myself that this was the right thing to do. At first glance, everything seemed in order. My room was clean, staff were friendly, meals arrived like clockwork, and my health was monitored. But within the first few weeks, a quiet truth began to set in. Not the loud kind that announces itself with drama, but the kind that slowly settles into your bones. A realization: comfort does not always equal happiness. Safety doesn't guarantee fulfillment. And peace? Well, peace is more than quiet hallways and a well-made bed. I began to notice the little things: how long the days felt, how rare laughter became, how I couldn't remember the last time someone asked me about my opinions, not my medications, and worst of all, how easy it was to disappear. Not physically, of course. My body was there, sitting by the window or waiting in the lounge, but my voice, my story, my identity, that felt like it was fading. This wasn't how I imagined it. And so I started keeping a journal, something I hadn't done since I was young. In those pages, I wrote down every truth I wish I had known before choosing this place. Not to complain, but to understand. Not to regret, but to reflect. And not to warn others, but to prepare them. Because while some nursing homes truly are places of warmth and dignity, many, far too many, are not. And even the best ones cannot replace what we sometimes give up too quickly: our independence, our voice, and our place in the world. So here are the 10 hard lessons I've learned since moving into a nursing home. Not from bitterness, but from lived experience. If you or someone you love is considering this path, read on. These are the things I wish someone had told me before I made the choice. Lesson 1. You might be safe, but you may not feel alive. Before I moved into a nursing home, the word safety was often used like a selling point, a promise. You'll be in good hands, they said. You'll be safe, well-fed, monitored, cared for. And they weren't wrong, at least not entirely. But what no one explained to me was this: being safe is not the same as feeling alive. The staff here know their routines well. Medication at 8, meals at 12 and 5, blood pressure checks every few days, bingo on Tuesdays. There's always someone nearby in case of a fall or a cough or a moment of confusion. But the longer I stayed, the more I began to wonder: is this what living has become? A schedule? A checklist? There's a strange kind of emptiness that comes from being watched but not seen. You might be surrounded by people, nurses, aides, other residents, and yet feel completely invisible. People ask how you're feeling physically. How's your pain today? Did you take your meds? But they rarely ask, what's been on your mind? What's made you smile lately? What do you miss most? I used to wake up with ideas, things I wanted to do, people I wanted to call, stories I needed to write down before they faded. Now, I wake up and wait. For breakfast, for visiting hours, for lights out. The quiet can be deafening. Don't get me wrong, safety is important, especially when you're older and your body doesn't cooperate the way it used to. But if you're not careful, the pursuit of safety can cost you the spark that makes life worth living. What I've learned is this: people don't thrive when they're only preserved. They thrive when they're engaged, when they're challenged, heard, needed. Safety should be the foundation, not the ceiling. If you or a loved one is considering a nursing home, ask yourself this: will it keep you safe, and will it keep you connected to life? Will you have opportunities to create, to contribute, to be more than just a patient? Because the truth is, you can be surrounded by walls that protect you and still feel like you're fading inside them. Lesson 2. Your independence isn't taken, it slips away quietly. No one knocks on your door one morning and says, "Good news, we're taking your independence today." That would be easier to notice. Instead, it happens silently, piece by piece, and by the time you realize how much of it is gone, it feels too late to get it back. When I first arrived, I told myself I'd stay sharp, that I'd make my own decisions, hold on to my routines, keep doing the little things I'd always done, choosing what to wear, making tea the way I liked it, deciding when to take a walk. But in here, decisions get made for you before you even realize you had the chance to make them. You want a shower at 10? Sorry, your aide is scheduled for 8. You want oatmeal instead of eggs? The kitchen made a batch for everyone already. You want to go outside? You need someone to unlock the courtyard gate. And they're busy right now. And so you start saying, it's okay. Then you start saying, whatever's easiest. Then you just stop saying anything. At first, it feels like convenience. Then it starts to feel like invisibility. And the hardest part, it doesn't always come from cruelty. The people here are often kind. But kindness without permission still leads to dependence. You're helped even when you didn't ask for help. You're told it's just easier this way. You're praised for being low maintenance. But you weren't born to be low maintenance. You were born to live. Losing independence isn't just about needing help physically. It's about the subtle erosion of your identity. The choices you make each day are how you stay you. When you stop choosing, you start drifting. So here's what I wish I knew sooner. Independence doesn't vanish in a moment. It fades, unless you fight for it. If you're considering this kind of living, don't just ask about safety or comfort. Ask, what can I still control here? Will I have real choices? Will my preferences be respected, not just recorded? And if you're already here, like me, hold on to the choices that are still yours, even the small ones. Insist on your tea a certain way. Ask for the late shower. Pick your own clothes. Say no sometimes, just because you can. Because once you stop choosing, you stop living on your own terms. And that's a far heavier loss than any physical limitation could ever be. Lesson 3. Loneliness isn't solved by proximity. It deepens in crowds. Before I moved into the nursing home, people reassured me with phrases like, "At least you'll be around others," or "You won't be alone anymore." They imagined hallways filled with laughter, shared meals, communal games, the kind of warmth that would melt isolation like ice under the sun. But here's what they don't tell you. You can be surrounded by people and still feel desperately, achingly alone. In fact, sometimes the loneliness is louder here because it echoes. You wake up to the sounds of shuffling walkers, clinking carts, distant TV shows playing in 3 different rooms. You pass people in the hall, nod politely, maybe exchange a few familiar phrases. But how many of those people really know you? I sit at a lunch table every day with 4 others. We say hello, we comment on the food, but no one asks about the dreams I still have. No one knows that my favorite flower is the yellow tulip. No one hears me when I hum an old love song to myself while stirring my tea. It's not their fault. They're fighting their own battles. They're tired. Some are confused, some are grieving. And the staff? They do their best, but they're stretched thin, racing against the clock, trying to meet quotas of care. The result is a strange kind of emotional vacuum, one where your physical presence is acknowledged, but your personhood is not. And the worst part? You begin to adapt. You stop offering stories because you're not sure anyone's listening. You stop asking questions because answers are short or rushed. You stop reaching out, not because you don't want connection, but because you start to believe you don't deserve it anymore. That's the real cost of loneliness in places like this. It teaches you how to shrink. I wish I had known this ahead of time. I wish I had asked more than, will I have company? I wish I had asked, will I still have connection? So if you're considering this life, know this. Being near others doesn't guarantee closeness. It might take more effort, more vulnerability, to find one person who really sees you than to sit in a room with 20 who don't. And if you're already here, like I am, don't give up on being known. Don't settle for surface-level nods. Try to learn someone's story. Really ask. Share one of yours. Make eye contact. Remember names. Risk the awkward silence that might lead to something deeper. Because we are not meant to just coexist. We are meant to be witnessed, to have our hearts mirrored in someone else's understanding. That's not a luxury. That's a need. And even after 70, even after 80, even after 90, it's a need that never goes away. Lesson 4. Loss has layers, and it doesn't stop with grief. Before I came to live in a nursing home, I thought I had already experienced the deepest forms of loss. I had buried my husband. I had said goodbye to friends I considered family. I had watched my children grow up and move far away, busy with lives that no longer needed me in the same daily way. I thought I had processed my grief. But I was wrong. I wasn't prepared for the new kinds of loss that would quietly unfold after I moved in. Not dramatic, tear-streaked losses, but subtle, cumulative ones. The kind that chip away at you slowly, like water wearing down stone. Here's the truth. Loss doesn't stop at death. It takes other shapes, smaller but no less painful. There's the loss of privacy. Your life becomes observable, almost public. A nurse knocks before entering your room, but you know she's seen everything. Your medications, your struggles to dress, the trembling in your hands. You learn to live with someone always watching, even when they're kind. There's the loss of identity. Outside, I was Mrs. Bennett, the neighborhood storyteller, the woman who taught Sunday school and baked extra banana bread for the widower down the block. In here, I'm room 218, or worse, the one who needs extra help with her walker. It's not anyone's fault, it's the system, but it still erodes the person I once was, layer by layer. There's the loss of autonomy. You can't just decide to go for a walk. You have to sign out. You can't eat what you want when you want. Breakfast is at 7:30. Dinner is at 5. If you miss it, you miss it. There's a structure to everything, and while it brings safety, it also brings a quiet kind of sorrow, the loss of choice. And perhaps the most unexpected loss of all, the loss of purpose. When you've spent a lifetime being needed, raising children, working jobs, solving problems, tending to others, it's disorienting to wake up and wonder, who needs me now? That question haunts the halls here. It shows in the way some residents stop brushing their hair, in the way they say I'm fine when they're clearly not, in the way their eyes drift away when no one is speaking to them. Not because they don't care, but because they've started to believe their care is no longer relevant. I wish I had understood that grief isn't a single chapter that ends when someone dies. It's a series of unfolding losses that can surprise you at every turn. But I also want to say this, because it matters. Loss doesn't mean absence of value. Even in this place, I've learned to reclaim small pieces of what was taken. I hang up old photos. I write down memories. I help a neighbor with crossword puzzles. I wear my favorite perfume every Tuesday, just because it reminds me of who I used to be. Some days, that's enough to fight back the erasure. If you're entering this phase of life, or helping someone who is, don't underestimate the quiet weight of these secondary losses. Honor them, make space for them, and help rebuild wherever you can. Because even if parts of us are taken, there is always more to be reclaimed. We are not just a sum of what we've lost, we are still somehow beautifully whole. Lesson 5. Community is not the same as connection. When I first moved into the nursing home, people told me how lucky I was. You'll be surrounded by people your age, they said. You'll never feel alone. At first, I believed them. I was entering a building with over 100 other residents. I passed cheerful activities boards filled with game nights, book clubs, bingo afternoons. I was assigned a table in the dining hall with 3 other women who shared my mealtime slot. Everything looked like community. But what I learned slowly, painfully, is that being surrounded by people doesn't mean you feel connected to them. Let me tell you about those first few weeks. I smiled a lot. I asked people where they were from, what they liked to do. Some responded warmly, but many were cautious. They had seen new faces come and go. They were used to loss, and they were tired of having to explain their lives again and again, only to have friendships disrupted by health declines, transfers, or worse. The dining hall was the hardest. Imagine sitting 3 feet away from someone every single day and still feeling like you were oceans apart. We ate together, yes, but most days we chewed in silence, forks clinking, occasional coughs, but no real conversation. Not because people were unkind, but because something essential was missing: shared history. It's one of the most jarring realizations. You can feel lonelier among a crowd than you ever did alone. Back in my own home, even when I was by myself, I had roots, familiar neighbors, a phone that rang with the voices of old friends, a church where they knew my name. The streets themselves whispered stories of my life, the bakery I once took my children to, the park bench where my husband first held my hand. In here, there are no such echoes. Everyone is starting from scratch, and while new friendships can form, and do, they take time. They take energy. They take emotional courage, which isn't always available in a place that also requires you to be brave just to get out of bed some mornings. I'm not saying connection is impossible here. I've made a few friends, real ones, but those bonds didn't grow from bingo games or craft circles. They came from quiet moments, holding someone's hand after bad news, laughing over shared memories of songs from our youth, comforting each other through the strange, beautiful ache of getting old. I've learned this. Community is built with structure, but connection is built with soul. You can't force it. You can't schedule it. And most importantly, you can't fake it. So if you or someone you love is considering a move to a nursing home, know this. It's not enough to ask, how many people live there? Ask instead, what helps them truly feel seen? Ask, how are residents encouraged to know one another, not just exist side by side? Because in the end, we don't need more bodies in the room. We need more hearts willing to reach across the silence and say, I see you. You're not alone in this place. Lesson 6, they take care of your body, but not always your soul. When I first moved into the nursing home, one of the biggest comforts was knowing that I would be looked after. My meals would be prepared, my medication managed, and someone would be there in case I fell or got sick. And yes, in many ways, they do take care of you, physically. But after a few months, I realized something deeper. While your body is protected, your soul can start to feel forgotten. There's a quiet ache that builds when you're treated only as a patient and not as a person. When the nurses see your chart before they see your face. When routines take priority over conversations. When your needs are met, but your longings are not even noticed. I remember one particular afternoon. A young nurse's aide came in to help me dress. She was kind, quick, efficient. She asked how I was feeling, and I said, a little sad today. She smiled politely, nodded, and went back to folding my nightgown. She wasn't rude, she wasn't unkind, but the message was clear. Sadness wasn't part of the schedule. There was no time for it, no room for it. And so, like many others here, I learned to tuck my deeper feelings away, to smile when I felt like crying, to say I'm fine when I wasn't. Because in this place, being physically stable is the priority. But being emotionally nourished, that's up to you. The truth is, many of us came here hoping not just to be taken care of, but to be understood. We wanted someone to see us not as a file or a set of vitals, but as a full human story still unfolding. I once heard a fellow resident whisper to me, I don't think anyone knows who I was before this, and I don't know if anyone ever will. It broke my heart, because behind every wrinkled face in this place is a lifetime. A woman who once danced barefoot in the rain, a man who built his house with his bare hands, a mother who held her dying child, a soldier who wrote letters by candlelight, a teacher who changed hundreds of lives with a chalkboard and compassion. But no one asks about those things. And over time, when no one asks, you start to forget too. So here's what I wish I'd known. Before you move into a nursing home, ask yourself, who will see my soul here? Who will ask about my past? Not just my pills. Who will listen, really listen, when I talk about the things that still matter to me? Because aging is not just a physical journey. It's emotional, it's spiritual, it's sacred. And if we only focus on preserving the body, we risk letting the soul grow quiet and then one day disappear altogether. So if you visit someone in a nursing home, don't just ask if they've eaten. Ask if they felt loved today. Ask what they dreamed about last night. Ask what memory made them smile this morning. Because the body may need care, but the soul needs connection, remembrance, and meaning. And when we tend to that, that's when we're truly alive. Lesson 7, losing friends happens faster than you think. When you move into a nursing home, you imagine you're joining a community, that you'll meet people your age with similar memories, similar aches, similar joys. You imagine late-night chats, quiet laughter in the garden, shared stories over warm tea. And sometimes you do get that for a little while. But what no one prepares you for is how quickly those friendships can vanish. In the outside world, when you make a friend, you assume they'll be around for years. You talk about the future, plan lunches, joke about growing older together. Here, you can meet someone in the hallway on Monday, and they're gone by Friday. Not because they moved, but because they got sick, because they fell, because they didn't wake up. It's a cruel rhythm, one that no one talks about, but everyone here knows. I remember Helen. She had this habit of humming old hymns while brushing her hair. She loved card games and always cheated just a little, just enough to make you laugh. We'd sit near the window and talk about our children, our regrets, our favorite desserts. One morning, I knocked on her door with 2 cups of coffee, as I always did. A nurse opened it instead. Her eyes told me everything. Helen had passed in her sleep, quiet, alone. They cleared her room by sunset. By the next week, someone new had moved in. No trace of her humming, no scent of her lavender lotion. Just silence, as if she'd never been there at all. That's what hits the hardest. How easily someone can disappear, and how quickly the world moves on. It creates a kind of grief that never fully settles. A grief that's always waiting in the next empty chair, the next unanswered knock, the next name missing from the sign-up sheet. And yet, we keep making friends. Because even though loss is inevitable, connection is essential. We still sit beside each other at meals, still share our stories, even if we might forget the names attached to them. Still reach out, knowing full well that one day, one of us will be left sitting alone. It's a quiet kind of bravery, this loving with open arms in a place built on goodbyes. So if you're considering a nursing home, or if someone you love already lives in one, know this: the friendships here are real, but they are fragile, and they deserve to be honored. Call often, visit longer, ask about the people they miss, let them say their names out loud, because remembrance is a form of love. And here, where time is short and goodbyes are frequent, love, even brief love, matters more than ever. Lesson 8. You're constantly reminded that this isn't your home. They tell you it's your new home. They smile when they say it. There's no place like home, right? They joke as they hand you your room key, as if it's a gift. But let's be honest, it's not really yours. Not the way your old home was, not in the way that matters most. Yes, your name is on the door. Yes, you might have a few framed photos on the dresser. Yes, the staff call you sweet names, honey, dear, Mr. Thomas. But it doesn't take long to realize this place belongs to the system, to schedules, to strangers, to the rules posted quietly in the hallway that nobody asked you about. You feel it when they knock once, then walk in without waiting. You feel it when your favorite chair gets moved for cleaning and never comes back. You feel it when breakfast is at 8 a.m. sharp, even if you're not hungry until 10. You feel it every time someone adjusts your blinds, touches your belongings, or changes your medication without really explaining why. In your real home, your old home, you made the rules. You could sleep in if you wanted. You could sing in the shower. You could eat cereal for dinner or cry in the kitchen without someone writing it in a report. Here, you're a guest in your own life. It's the little things that chip away at you. The way they decorate the hallways for holidays you no longer celebrate. The way they rearrange furniture to match a theme, not your needs. The way your room smells like cleaning spray instead of the cookies you used to bake on Sundays. And when family visits, if they visit, they often say things like, "Isn't this place so nice? They take good care of you here, right? This must be so relaxing." They mean well, but they don't see the full picture. They don't see that while you're grateful for the care, you still long for the freedom to live on your own terms. You miss choosing what to do with your day. You miss being surrounded by things that told the story of your life, not just a few souvenirs from it. You miss being more than just one room in a hallway full of closed doors. So you adapt, you learn to smile, you decorate the windowsill, you fold your sweaters just the way you used to, as if that gives you some control. But deep down, there's an ache. Because home isn't just where you sleep, it's where you feel seen, safe, and sovereign. And in a nursing home, no matter how kind the staff or how clean the rooms, you are reminded, again and again, this place cares for you, but it doesn't belong to you. That truth lingers, quietly, like the creak of a hallway door at night, always opening, never truly closed. Lesson 9. Losing touch with the world outside feels like losing yourself. At first, the phone calls keep coming. Your children call every few days. Your grandchildren send you drawings sometimes. Your friends, the ones still living independently, drop by for coffee or a quick chat in the common room. But slowly, things start to quiet down. Not all at once, not dramatically, just gradually. The calls stretch from days to weeks. The visits become holidays only. The conversations get shorter, not because anyone is unkind, but because they don't know what to say anymore. And you start running out of stories they haven't already heard. You try not to feel forgotten. You remind yourself that everyone's busy. You tell yourself that this is what aging looks like, a narrowing of the world. But deep down, there's a heaviness. Because before the nursing home, you had a life with movement. You went to the post office. You waved to neighbors. You walked to the market, even if it took twice as long. You had rituals that made you feel connected, not just to places, but to people. Now, most days feel like repeats of the last. You watch the same shows, eat at the same times, listen to the same birds outside the same window. And the outside world, the one you used to belong to, starts to feel like a memory you're watching through glass. You hear about your niece getting married after the fact. You find out your best friend from church passed away from a Facebook post your daughter read. You learn your childhood home was torn down and no one told you. There's a loneliness that comes not just from being alone, but from feeling unnecessary. You start to wonder, do I still matter to the world I once helped build? Does anyone remember who I was, who I still am, beneath the white hair and soft slippers? The truth is, being in a nursing home doesn't just mean being apart. It can mean becoming invisible. Unless someone chooses to see you. Unless someone decides that your stories, your thoughts, your presence still hold weight. And that's why even the smallest connection, a handwritten letter, a grandchild's silly phone call, a nurse who asks about your favorite song, can light something inside you. Because that light, it reminds you that you're not gone. You're still here, still valuable, still part of the world, even if the world sometimes forgets. Aging doesn't erase your identity, but being forgotten, that just might. So if you know someone in a place like this, reach out, ask, listen, visit, because staying connected isn't just about kindness. It's about keeping someone alive in the ways that matter most. Lesson 10. The clock ticks louder when you're alone with regret. Time behaves differently in a nursing home. It's slower, yet somehow heavier. The hours stretch, but the years vanish in a blink. And when your world becomes 4 beige walls and a narrow hallway, you start to hear things that used to be drowned out by life's noise. One of those things is the ticking of regret. It starts with small thoughts. I should have traveled more when I had the chance. I wish I'd danced at my daughter's wedding instead of sitting in the back feeling tired. I should have said I'm sorry before he passed. But then it deepens. You remember the dreams you shelved, the words you swallowed, the love you didn't fight for, the risks you didn't take because it felt safer to wait. You start to realize you were always waiting for the right time. But no one told you that time is a river, not a pond. It doesn't pause for you. It flows, always forward. Now, with more years behind you than ahead, you sit with that, sometimes in silence, sometimes in tears, sometimes in quiet, unspoken ache. Regret is a sharp companion. It doesn't yell, it whispers. It says you thought there'd be more time to fix that relationship. You thought you could always write that book, learn that song, make that call. But now you wonder if it's too late. And the worst part? It's not the missed opportunities. It's the realization that fear, not fate, held you back. But here's the truth most people never tell you. It's not too late. As long as you're breathing, you still have something powerful, choice. You can still write a letter, make that call, tell someone they mattered, ask for forgiveness, offer it freely. You can still start small, share your story, give someone a piece of wisdom that cost you years to learn, smile at a stranger in the hallway, hold someone's hand who's grieving like you are. Because the antidote to regret isn't denial, it's action. Even now, especially now. If you're reading this and feel that ache of I wish I had, turn it into I still can. The clock may tick louder in these later years, but that just means you're more aware of what matters. Let that awareness guide you. Let it free you. Let it move you towards something, anything, that feels meaningful. Because the worst regret isn't making the wrong choice. It's making no choice at all. And if you can still choose even now, then you're not just aging, you're living. And that, my friend, is the most powerful truth of all. You may have gray in your hair and a slower step than you once did, but your story isn't over. Your heart still beats with purpose. Your voice still carries wisdom. Your presence still means something, more than you may ever realize. If life has taught you hard truths, wear them like armor. If regret has visited your room, let it inspire the next brave step. And if you're still here, reading this, breathing, hoping, hurting, loving, then there is more ahead, more to feel, more to share, more to become. So don't let anyone, including yourself, tell you it's too late. Because if you still have a today, you still have a chance to make it beautiful. Thank you for walking through these lessons with me. If this touched your heart, please share it. Someone out there may need these words more than you know. And remember, you're not just growing old, you're growing deeper, wiser, braver. You're not fading, you're evolving. And that is a story worth telling.